Okay, welcome everyone to the AAUP sponsored promotion and tenure workshop. This year it is entitled Achieving Promotion and Tenure Policies and Procedures at UIUC. For those of you who don't have the full background, this is part of an annual program that the AAUP local chapter puts on. And many in the past have found it helpful, so it's something that we continue to do. I think many of you know me, but for those who don't, my name is Rob Carr. I'll be moderating. Currently, I'm the president of the local AAUP chapter. I'm also a professor of law and philosophy, interim head at the philosophy department, and associate dean for curricular innovation at the College of Law. More importantly, for those of you who don't know what the AAUP is, it's an organization, a national organization that was founded primarily to preserve certain institutions in higher education that, at least in my view, make higher education in the United States one of the envies of the world. Those are institutions like academic freedom, shared governance, tenure, which is meant to protect academic freedom. And of course, when you're talking about promotion in a context like this, the rules and procedures need to be ones that reflect some of those larger values. And I am proud to say that our institution, I think, does a very good job of that. We have a number of guests who will be speaking. They've been chosen because they have broad expertise from a number of different parts of the process. Those are, and this isn't necessarily the order they'll speak in, but we have Bill Bernard, the Executive Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, Vice Provost for Budget and Resource Planning. Hello, Bill. Good to see you. We have Curtis Perry, the Kirkpatrick Professor of English and current chair of the Campus Committee on Promotion and Tenure. So, the files will eventually go to his committee. So he has thoughts, I'm sure, and insights at that stage. I should also say, Curtis is the person who helped me learn how to write P&T files when he was the associate dean and I was a fledgling head, and he helped me quite a lot. So thank you, Curtis. We have Ami Santos, Rosa Milagro Santos, but we all know her as Ami. And she has a wonderful set of slides on the entire set of procedures. She's the Associate Provost for Faculty Development, so knows quite a lot about that. And finally, Carol Tilley, who is an Associate Professor of Information Science, but is also the chair of the Faculty Advisory Committee, which is a committee that many of you can go to and should go to if you have issues where you feel concerns about the processes and procedures. That too, by the way, is a role that we play for AAUP. If you ever need confidential support, guidance, or consultation, you can reach out to us. I've already said a little bit about the format, but the format is that each of them are going to speak for a little while, and then we'll open it up to question and answer. Just raise your hand. But as I said, because this is recorded, if anyone has anonymity concerns, the way to do that is to put a more generally sounding question into the chat, and one of us will ask it for you. And then finally, I just wanted to point out two events that because of the nature of today's event, some of you may be interested in and let you know about it. First, the AAUP is putting on a webinar on threats to higher education on the road to authoritarianism. That's going to be next Friday from 12 to 1:30. The details are in eWeek. They're also on our website. If for any reason you need to know them, you could also email me or one of us. But it might be helpful to kind of understand some of the larger sort of political context that we're in. One of the things we've been learning is that some of those threats arise from leaders fomenting public opinion against higher education. And so as a follow-up in our final meeting at the AAUP, which I believe is on May 1st, we are organizing a panel that will speak more about how to communicate academic values to a broader audience. And we're still sort of setting that up, but it may be helpful to some of you as well. Again, reach out if that is of any interest. Today, however, we're here to support you. And by you, I mean both people who may be undergoing or considering a promotion, but also other faculty who are either shepherding cases through or are in other, you could be heads, you could be, you could be parts of executive committees and so on, to help you understand better how the process works and how you can support our faculty in ensuring that they flourish as best as possible at our institution. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to the four speakers, and I think Ami might be going first, but I'll sort of let you guys battle it out if there's any kind of question about orders. Ami, would you like to start?
Okay, there, if I can unmute it. Yes, if that's okay, I wanted to just do a very quick overview, and this is, and I'm going to share my screen here. So hopefully you're all seeing the screen that says in general. So I wanted to kind of do this. Many of you, if you've gone through our new faculty orientation or other faculty development programs that we have for, especially for our new faculty, some of these are going to be very familiar to you, but it also, we know that in learning, it doesn't help, it helps that to hear a lot, these things multiple times. So bear with me as I go through some of these slides that may or may not be familiar to you. So first of all, when we think about our faculty, particularly our early career faculty, we want to make sure that you know that the University of Illinois is really committed to your success. We are investing a lot in bringing you here to this university, and we want you to succeed, and that you were hired because you have shown great potential to succeed here at the university. And that is why that's where we start, and that we provide the kinds of supports that we hopefully will support the resources that would support your success. So I'll talk a little bit about some of those. So starting with that, and so then thinking about promotion, what does that mean? What's the criteria? Usually that's a question that we're asked. So as you know, the university, this is in making decisions about promotions, this is the most important decision that we make, because it's the decisions that we make really impact the future of the university and for many decades. And so because of this long-term interest, the university wants to make sure that these that the criterion is that in promoting you, in tenuring, in providing, in awarding tenure, that it is in the best interest of the university. And just kind of like a very kind of like a thinking about what does it mean to get tenured from assistant to associate, and associate to full. Shorthand version of thinking about what we look for, or what's generally looked for, is that when you're going from assistant to associate professor, they're looking at your promise, that you're showing real promise in your field, and that you are there making contributions in the appropriate magnitude. So there's certain things that would be, it's very discipline based, it's very much unique to your area. And what they're going to look is the likelihood of you being able to sustain these contributions that you're making to the field, to the department, and to the university if we were to award you a tenure and promotion. And for those who are going up from associate to full professor, what they're looking for is the fact that you have already fulfilled that promise that you showed when you were promoted to associate professor. And so looking at, since your last promotion, what has been done regarding student mentoring, curricular innovations, your national and international reputation, and the kinds of initiatives that you have done through your career here. Again, going back, the candidate has made contributions of an appropriate magnitude, whether you're going from assistant to associate, associate to full. And so I always, tell faculty members when I've talked with them about this, is to really know what the expectations for faculty within their unit. One of the pro tips that I always say is to make sure that you understand what are the expectations for distribution of your workload around research, teaching, and service. And so if you're not fulfilling the work that's expected within those areas, then you need to know that and you need to understand that. And I've already mentioned about the likelihood of sustaining contributions to the field. So just a kind of like walking you through kind of what this may look like. So if you came in fall of 2024, you're now in tenure code 1. And then so as you can see, every year your tenure code advances. And by the end of your tenure code 2, for some of you who are already here, who have been here, you would be your unit will then begin processing your formal third year review. And by spring 2027, there will be an evaluation that would have been completed that kind of helps you think about what areas you want to continue to work on, or where you might need to pivot, or perhaps really rethink some of the work that you've been doing around in your area. The tenure process generally doesn't start until tenure code 5. So if you follow this along, the PNT process starts around spring of your tenure code 5, and then it goes through fall and spring of the following year. And generally, we send out notifications to the deans by May 15 about decisions. What's helpful for you to know is that promotion and tenure just doesn't happen at that moment. It has to happen every year. Starting with your annual reviews, and then your third year review, and then building up towards your promotion and tenure. If you are unaware of any of these policies, you can go ahead and scan that QR code. It'll take you directly to our provost communications that will give you a little bit more information about what these reviews are as you heading towards your promotion and tenure. Now, why does it take so long to complete a promotion and tenure review? So because starting from your department, your faculty will review your dossier. And then once that is approved, it moves to the college. And then the college has a PNT committee that then will review. And then if that gets moved to the next level, then the campus PNT, which Curtis Perry this year is leading, and then they review. And then that then moves on to the Board of Trustees for their final approval. That takes about 9 to 12 months to complete. That's why I said typically it starts in the spring when you put your papers together, your department reviews and votes, and then your college typically around fall semester reviews and votes, and then the following spring semester, that's when the campus PNT reviews and votes, and then finally in the summer is when the Board of Trustees does their final review and then approves these promotions. And then officially it's your promotion and tenure then begins in the fall the following year. So just a few pro tips. One of the things I always say is if you have this pretty CVs that you started out with from grad school going into your job here at Illinois, you might want to go back. You might want to start thinking about revising the format, using the format that we have for promotion and tenure. So you can use that. You can find that in Provost Communication number 9 webpage. There we have a very specific weird format that's very unique to our university, and it's really to your advantage to start formatting your CVs around using that format. And I'm sure Curtis will tell you why that's the case, but I will just tell you from the campus point of view, we review over 100, and this year 120 promotion and tenure cases, and it's really important for them to see these dossiers all in the same format. We always ask that you provide all the requested data. And if you don't have any data, say, for example, if you don't do patents or things like that, then you put none, just don't leave it blank. and if it's not applicable, then you say not applicable. We ask about your teaching research, and then if you want to include a service statement as well as a DEI statement, those are at this point not required, but if you want to add that's there's a fillable out, there's an outline that we use that we ask you to fill out. We say 3 pages or fewer. I just heard a situation from a college that said that there was a teaching statement that came in at 16 pages. No way, we're going to read 16 pages of a teaching statement. So please, 3 pages, and then microscopic fonts. So somebody asked me today, what's the font size? I always say 12-point font. That's usually the easiest way to read those things. We, also just know that there's a way for you to submit publications that have come after you've submitted your dossier. So if it's still in the process, there's a way for your unit to be able to submit anything that's come up since you submitted your dossier. So it could still be considered for your for during the review. So know that there's an opportunity to do that. And that's handled through your department head or chair. Biggest thing, and proofreading is really, really important. Using consistent formatting, like making sure that when you italicize something, you italicize, like the same things throughout, underlining or whatever it is. And then the one thing that we always ask people to do is really have colleagues read and give you feedback on your statements, on your dossier, as early as you can get them, enough time so that you can make the suggested changes as you go through it. So that's the end of my my PowerPoint, and Rob has it, and he's I'm happy to have it shared if people are interested in it.
I'm glad you just said that, because that was one of the questions in the chat that I was going to raise to you.
Yes, yeah, so it's there.
So if you want to share it with me, anyone else, I'll get it out to, or how you can contact Amia as well. Okay, who is up next?
Me?
All right.
Yeah. So I'm Curtis Perry, and I'm here because I'm chair of the campus level promotion and tenure committee, and I think that means I'm supposed to speak from a bird's eye view of the whole system, since I've read every single dossier for 2 years now. There are 12 professors on this committee. I think we're recruited by Bill and Ami through the deans from different colleges with different expertise. And the idea is that there's such heterogeneity on this campus as far as kinds of scholarship that people do and kinds of teaching environments that people work in and so forth, that none of us understands all the dossiers we read very well. And so we learn as we go from each other and from the dossiers. And that's what makes it an interesting committee to be on. We get about 20 to 25 every 2 weeks, and we go through them all spring semester. As I said, none of us intuitively understands the context of any of all of them. All of us contribute, everyone on the committee contributes expertise that from their areas in assessing some of them. Every case that comes to us has been approved at the department, maybe school, maybe college level. So every case has been voted on at least 1 level, and sometimes as many as 5 levels when there are candidates who have joint appointments, and each of them is in a school. So it'd be department, school, college, and then us. So we don't expect to have significant problems. We don't expect to be voting negatively on cases that often or ever, because people who know the fields better than we do have already approved them. I think our role mostly is to try to understand, to try to make sure that there's a kind of good sense consistency that's going on, and to try to sometimes mirror back to departments and colleges if their practices are not in line with other parts of campus. We do vote on every case, but as I say, the expectation is not that we're being super critical, because people who know the field better than we do have already voted on them. Um, I I was hired as a full professor, so I never put a Com9 CV together for myself, but I have been involved in this process as a faculty member of my department, as a department head in my department, as a member of the college's executive committee in LAS that votes on them, as an associate dean in LAS working with department heads and on this campus committee. So I think I've been involved in approximately 400 cases in a kind of an evaluative capacity. So I have that to draw on as well. And I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish, and I do know that any system consisting of humans can go wrong, but I have been consistently impressed since I've been on this campus by the fact that mostly what's going on in these processes at all levels that I've been aware of is people trying in good faith to understand what makes a candidate's CV sing. I have not seen, actually, in my experience, malice. I have seen confusion sometimes, but it basically is a process where people are trying to understand things. And as you get higher up the evaluative chain for college committees, campus committees, often it's about just people who are from very different disciplines trying to understand what makes excellence in this discipline. At the university I was promoted in, some of my own scholarship went with my promotion packet. So presumably at the campus level, there could have been, say, a nuclear scientist who read my work on 17th century drama and had an opinion of it. That may seem like an appropriate way to do this, but I think it has some pitfalls, and in other universities nationally, sometimes there are problems because if you read somebody's work that's politically polarizing, you might think you know what's really going on despite what the experts in the field think. Our system actually, it asks people at college and campus levels to evaluate dossiers that consist of many an objective CV and then a lot of different evaluative takes on it. So if we read a case in campus promotion and tenure committee, we read your objective CV, and then we read your statements, and then we read the department statements, and then we read 5 or more statements by outside evaluators, and then we read the EO statements, and I'm just dean statements. So often it's a process of reading all of these different things and seeing how they cohere, and whether they add up to a consistent picture of what the excellence in this case is, rather than a nuclear scientist trying to read this and say, well, this seems shallow, I don't like it, or whatever the equivalent would be. So I actually do think it works, and that our process encourages the evaluation to be very much about how to understand a specific case in its disciplinary context in a way that's entirely positive. One upshot of all this is that once a case leaves a department, and so once the case has been voted on by faculty who've read and understood the work and who know the disciplinary environment, the challenges in the process are more often about translation or communication than about fairness. And in my experience, the big challenge in the way we do it is about trying to make it so that people who are far away from your discipline at various campus and college evaluative stages can understand your work. And sometimes I have got a kind of repertoire from my own experience of things that actually are surprisingly, unexpectedly difficult translations between areas that I've seen over the years. And you do kind of build that up over time. But one of the things that you'll probably hear, and I just want to reiterate, is that if you're putting a case together, shepherding a case, if you're a mentor or something, and you see if there's something in external evaluations of a case that's negative, and you still support the candidate, which is usually the case. I mean, I think in the overwhelming majority of time, certainly all the cases we see on campus, the department wants us to understand why this person is excellent. And you support, so if there's a negative thing in the letter and you support the candidate, say why. Say why you support the candidate, and this isn't a killing objection. We understand that you probably know the field and the context and the meaning of these things better than we do. So if you have a reasonable thing to say, it doesn't have to be something hugely rhetorically fraught. Often we will take something reasonable as reasonable. So don't hide things, and don't think you can avoid them. But also, often, I remember as an EO myself, sometimes wondering, how do I address this? And then sort of settling on, actually, I know what I think, so why don't I just say that? And that winds up often being the best approach. One piece of advice that I think is useful for both candidates and EOs, and here I'm speaking to the overwhelming majority of cases where everybody kind of wants everything to succeed, is remember that part of what you have to do in these dossiers is teach the evaluative committees how to read the objective record. That if you're writing to people from different disciplines, they won't necessarily know what the signal thing is in that vita. And often external evaluators' letters are written in the department's own terms, and so they don't necessarily do that translation work either. So there is a way in which you can think about teaching the review committees how to read the excellence of the case. And if you do that explicitly, it can help the thing sail through. So just to give a couple of examples of that, I have sometimes said to EOs and candidates that every promotion case tells 3 stories about research. And the 3 stories are, 1, there's a disciplinary bar that this has met. And 2, this person has worked consistently enough throughout whatever the last review period is so that we can predict that they will continue to work afterwards, even if they now have tenure or even if they're now past the last substantive evaluation they will have in their careers. And then 3rd, this person is on an upward trajectory. So it's useful to think about what in the objective record tells those stories and make sure that's evident to people who might not know how vitas look in your area. So a couple of examples. If you're in a book discipline, if you're writing about an English professor or a historian and they have, a couple of articles and a book, it might be worth spending some time saying how mammothly difficult the archive of documents that person worked with is. And so it makes sense that, so that you're explaining why this publication record actually is assiduous labor for 6 years, which would not be obvious to some in a field where there's a much more regular beat of publications, maybe. Or if you're writing in a discipline where and so that would be story number 2. This person has worked hard enough throughout the disciplinary period, they can be predicted to continue to work afterwards throughout the probationary period. Or if you are in a field where what independence looks like is ceasing to work with your postdoc advisor on co-authored publications and instead publishing pieces where your grad students are first author and your corresponding author, and that's the trajectory you want. Make sure that it's clear in the evaluative statements so that a humanist like me, who hasn't had a lot of experience, can look at that record and see that it's actually evidence of story number 3, which is an upward trajectory, right? So in other words, think about what in your discipline tells those 3 stories and make sure it's explicit so that people who are in different disciplines can understand. I think you could say the same thing about teaching. We now have this campus-wide these campus-wide guidelines to teaching excellence, and they say that our teaching is supposed to be well-designed, well-delivered, inclusive and ethical, reflective and evolving. It might be that if you thought about what those things meant specifically in your teaching environment, there would be things that are slightly different than a different one, and you might think, okay, what do we have as evaluative material that helps tell those stories? And if we don't have things that help tell those stories, what might I want to get if I'm writing a departmental teaching statement so that I can tell those stories about this person's teaching record? So again, what the campus-wide definition of teaching excellence does is it gives us a set of things that we should say a candidate does. So how, from our specific place, are we able then to say that persuasively to people who might be in very different teaching environments? What story are you telling about service? That the person does what they're asked, that the person has commitments that are important to them and that will guarantee a kind of citizenship that will go above and beyond. Be explicit about what the story is and what the evidence in the record is that backs that story up. So all of that is, I think, obviously useful, or has been to me, if you're writing a departmental evaluation or if you're an EO. But I think it can also be useful to think in those terms if you're a candidate for promotion, because for one thing, you do write statements, and the statements can also help provide that information. But also, one way that a candidate can be proactive beyond just having an excellent record that meets with the approval of a department is making sure that the people who are assembling your case actually have the information that they will need to have to tell those stories. So in a big department like mine, sometimes there are parts of the department that the EO does not know all that well, and so they might not know why this press is excellent in this field, and that's a thing you might want to emphasize, for example. But also, one thing that you should know as a candidate is that as cases move up the chain, if the evaluative committees have questions, they ask either the department head or the dean, respectively, and those people need to be able to answer those questions. And often they don't want to go back to the candidate because nobody wants to freak anybody out about something that's probably just incidental. But it means that an EO has to be well educated about the surround of your case as well as just having seen the CV, and it also because the dean might go back to the EO if the campus committee asks. And so, like, one thing you can do is think about what's specific about your teaching and research and service record and make sure that that's evident to whoever is assembling your case so that they can represent it if something untoward happens along the way. I used to, once upon a time, before the campus emphasized teaching observations, I used to suggest that faculty actually request them so that there would be better evidence of teaching than just student evaluations in case student evaluations went wrong. Now those are required, but it's still probably the case that a faculty member could think, well, is my teaching record being well reflected in the data that the evaluators have? And if not, what can I provide? I sometimes feel like a more proactive stance at the beginning on the part of the candidate might actually lead to a better departmental teaching evaluation, not better in terms of being more positive, but in terms of being more persuasive. So I guess, one of the big things is that I want to emphasize just as utility for everybody involved in the process is that it's almost, in my experience, it has really never been there. I'm sure there are situations that are bad, and Carol will talk about what to do in those situations. But in the situations that I've experienced, the issue has never been malice. The issue has almost always been communication. I have, as an EO, had cases that were turned down and then succeeded on appeal to the same committees, which meant that more information was exactly what was needed. And it would be helpful, I think, for everybody, the EOs, the departmental evaluators, and the candidates to think of that communication number 9 CV not just as a kind of rebarbative grid that you have to fill in, but as an opportunity for highly formatted storytelling. Right? You want to make sure that actually you are communicating the stories that need to be communicated about this person to people and educating the people up the chain about how excellence in your discipline looks. And so that's a sort of different way to think about it that I think can pay off a certain amount. So those are my remarks.
Thank you, Curtis. That was really excellent. And if I could just quickly underline a couple things. So Amy was talking about how important it is if you're a candidate to sort of learn the standards in your field. That really maps up a little bit to what Curtis is saying, and that at the next level, the EO or whoever's writing the letters has to be able to communicate what those standards are to people outside of the field. And so, I'll regularly have in my EO letters, philosophy is not a book-driven field. It usually does this. I've got to say that, and every field is going to be different there. But the fact that there may be elements of your story that and an EO doesn't, let them know. I mean, not in a pushy way, but give them the materials so that they can tell your full story. And then the last thing I wanted to say is some of this is about timing. So if you're not doing that, or if there's something that could be a question or a problem and you haven't addressed it, my view is address that right up front. So if I'm an EO, if there's a teaching issue, I'll want to say that I went back, I've talked to this is what we're doing. If you see a hole in your record, you probably want to let the people above know in an objective way, because it's not always just about assessment. It's about making sure you get through the process in a timely way and don't have the questions sort of come back to you. So I hope that's helpful. And who else is up next? And everything I just said there, I probably got from Curtis because he taught me everything. So,
Bill, do you want to go next?
Either way, Carol, would you like me to go ahead?
Oh, I don't care either. So whatever your preference is.
Why don't I go, and then I will lead into you in the important role that you and
Right.
Faculty Advisory Committee plays. So good afternoon, everyone. I want to start off by thanking our partners at AAUP for sponsoring this annual event. Very happy to be here. And I want to, we've been talking about the tenure process. I want to just say I think we have a very robust process. We have a robust commitment to the institution of tenure here. I don't see that changing anytime soon. I don't see it changing, period. We are committed to the institution of tenure and as a bulwark for academic freedom and a foundation for the success of the University of Illinois. So as Ami mentioned and Curtis mentioned, we want you to succeed. We hire you because we believe in your potential and your success becomes our success. And I think our process is designed to be open and transparent in the way we go about evaluating your contributions. Our process is also flexible. It recognizes that life happens and that not all candidates come from the same disciplinary background or even do the same sorts of activities. And I want to take a few minutes to talk about some of the ways in which our system is flexible and adaptable, and to give you just a sense that if you have these concerns, where do you go? Who do you talk to about them? So the first thing is we do have a process for tenure, what we call tenure rollbacks. These are situations where something happens and you need to stop the clock, basically, to take an extra year. So for the birth or adoption of a child, you have an opportunity to take a rollback there to stop the clock. You also have an opportunity to take modified teaching duties in that particular situation, which was a teaching reduction for a semester in the year after that. Those are two separate sets of paperwork in true good University of Illinois fashion, but you're entitled to that. A rollback can also happen if you become very sick, or someone in your family becomes very sick, or if you have to take care of a sick child, a sick parent, where it's taking you away from your work for an extended period of time. That is grounds for a rollback as well. We also have grounds for a rollback for something called grave administrative error. And this means that for some reason, something has happened administratively that has prevented you from getting your work done. I think the most common example is if you're a scientist and you need you come in and the department says, great, you're here, we're going to build you a lab. And then it takes 3 years to build that lab because of regulations and equipment wasn't available and so on and so forth. Well, you've lost 3 years. That is a reason to take to have a rollback and stop the clock, because again, you've been prevented for reasons that are not related to you, but you've been prevented from making progress toward the goal of producing research. So when COVID came about, we made rollbacks available to our faculty, and kind of an act of God that intervened and hurt people's ability to get their work done. Again, rollbacks were available. When I think about the current situation, for some of you who may have your research interrupted by interruptions to federal funding, cancellations of grants, and so on and so forth, this, to me, strikes me as a possible case for a rollback. you need to talk to your EO, your department head, about that process, seek his or her advice, and then, assuming you agree, then you can put the paperwork forward with just a very short justification, just a short paragraph that will move forward through the system. I think a second thing that we do with our system that is flexible is our instructions to letter writers. We provide guidance to department heads when they go out and seek letter writers about what we're looking for, what we value at the University of Illinois, and what they value in that particular department. We also, during COVID, put in some extra language that reminded letter writers about the COVID situation and about the difficulties it created for faculty as they struggled with the pandemic. I anticipate and think that we will probably add some additional language around this federal funding situation, just to remind letter writers about some of the challenges that have come about because of changes in the federal environment. Your research. So I also want to make it clear that there's some flexibility around different ways of researching and different types of contributions. So one of the things that we've introduced in the last couple of years is an opportunity for publicly engaged research to take a track in that space. And this is a situation where if you are pursuing research that cannot really be evaluated by traditional metrics, where the impact is going to be in the community rather than in a journal article or in a book. This is an option where we can assist you and the department to come together and establish some common expectations about the nature of your research, how it is to be evaluated, and what constitutes excellence there. This gives you an opportunity, I think, to pursue a different type of research, one that is much more engaged and connected to the community, and still be recognized and still be rewarded for excellence. We also have situations, some of you have pursue work that's highly interdisciplinary. We recently introduced opportunities to include internal letters from co-authors, internal letters from people on common grants, to better explain the nature of the work, better explain the nature of your contributions to that work, to recognize basically how you're making a broader contribution rather than just through the disciplinary mechanisms. We also have right now an optional statement around activities in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. This is meant to give you an opportunity to share if there are activities you've undertaken that improve basically the inclusivity and diversity of our campus that don't show up in the rest of the dossier. Here's an opportunity for you to write this down and to tell us about it. Okay? I will be frank with you that this statement, which is optional, I don't know what's going to happen to it in the current federal climate. University Council is reviewing it. They're reviewing what comes out of the EOs, the Trump administration. But for now, it's there, and we want to hear from you. We want, again, to measure the full breadth of your contributions that you're making to our campus.
And Bill, on that one, if I could just ask, so there might be some uncertainty as to what exactly that will happen, but even if not in that form, I assume that you all will communicate to us if there are other places where we could put other information like that, or in different ways, even if there's a change. I assume that would also.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I think that's a great point. When you go through Communication 9, you'll see that there are various prompts around contributions to DEI. It may come through research, it may come through teaching, it may come through service, and then there's this optional statement if your activities aren't captured in these other places. I think also too, as we navigate the changing federal environment, we'll be thinking about different ways in which we as an institution can capture those types of activities as contributions to our fundamental land grant mission. And to make sure that what you all do is recognized, is evaluated, and is part of the process in thinking about the promotion and tenure decision. It may take different forms. I mean, we may have to do that. I just don't know yet. But we, as an institution, I think, are committed to doing our best to making sure that all your different activities count toward tenure and are part of the evaluation process. I think the last thing I'll say around some of these, differences that people face. Some of you have joint appointments. We have processes for that. There's a provost communication about those joint appointments. The main thing there is that both units and the candidate should agree in advance on what the promotion and tenure evaluation will look like in terms of process. Most of the time, that means one evaluation committee producing one report that then goes to both departments and both departments vote. But that's most of the time. That's not all of the time. The main thing is to get the expectations in common. So I think our process does recognize different permutations. It recognizes different personal situations. It recognizes different professional situations. And does our best to accommodate it, again, because we're invested in you and your success. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before I segue into Carol is there are situations where there is a negative decision at whatever level. One of the questions that often comes up, and Curtis alluded to this, is it, how often do people get denied tenure at the University of Illinois? When we look back historically, what we see is probably around, I would say, 6 to 8% of candidates who are put forward don't make it. Okay? The vast majority of those denials take place at the departmental level. Okay, and that makes sense. The department knows your work the best. It's in the best position to evaluate your disciplinary contributions. It's in the best position to evaluate your teaching effectiveness and how you've contributed to that educational program. The next level up, college level, they're fewer. And then when you get to the campus level, it's very rare that the campus level turns back. I would also say that in those instances, when the campus committee does turn someone back, it's almost always for the transition from associate professor to full professor. Okay? So in this situation that where you do have there is a denial, there is an appeal process, and that is found in Provost Communication number 10. Okay, and you have an opportunity to provide, as Curtis said, provide new information, provide a different interpretation, but then that appeal will go back to the same level. So if you were denied at the department level, it'll go back to the department level for reconsideration. And then the college level will do kind of a procedural check to make sure that the next level up does a procedural check. So in this case, the college would do that. If you're denied at the college level, you'd appeal back to the college level, and the provost office would do a procedural check. If this happens, if you find yourself in the unfortunate position where you are denied, I strongly, strongly encourage you to seek guidance from your department head. I strongly encourage you to seek guidance from a mentoring committee or trusted senior advisor, and I strongly encourage you to reach out to the faculty advisory committee, chaired by Carol Tilley this year, and they can advise you and help you. And Carol's going to kind of walk you through what they do and what their processes are. And we're so grateful for her valuable advice. And I can't stress this enough. They are a tremendous resource when you have questions about process and questions about how to proceed. They're neutral and they can be trusted. So Carol, please.
All right. Well, that's a lot to live up to, Bill. So I'll do my best here. First of all, I want to say thanks for including me today. in this conversation. It's one of the highlights of the year. I also want to say that I am a proud local and national AAUP member, so I just want to do a little bit of a shill for the AAUP and the important work that it does locally and nationally. But I'm here today on behalf of the Faculty Advisory Committee, and we, along with the Faculty Senate, are one of two statutory bodies here at the university. And we are a group of elected tenured faculty from a variety of disciplines. And we work to provide support primarily to faculty on campus around policy issues and other kinds of dilemmas or uncertain moments that arise. And for faculty who are facing a negative decision regarding promotion and or tenure, we are also here to offer assistance. We do more than just promotion and tenure stuff. We're available really at any point in your career where you would benefit from some outside guidance or consultation. We're happy to help. And you can request those consultations with us at any time. Go to our website. You can email me or whoever happens to be the current chair or anyone who's on the committee. All of our email addresses are there. Beyond a consultation, we can also open a case with the agreement of the faculty member. And at a case level, we have the opportunity to do our own investigation to see if there are places in which policy, procedure, and or precedent sort of broke down. And I will say that, we see not all 6 to 8% maybe of the promotion and tenure denials in a given year, but we do see a significant number of them. And we are happy to help and make sure that your case got the best consideration that's possible within your unit. So let me give you some advice from the perspective of the Faculty Advisory Committee, what we see as sort of typical areas where things break down. And my hope is that you never have to interact with the Faculty Advisory Committee for any reason other than pleasurable ones. You see us out and have a cup of coffee with us or something. But the best advice I can give you, first of all, is to understand the policies, procedures, and processes at both your unit levels and the campus levels around promotion and tenure. That means being familiar with things like the communication from the provost about the third year review, understanding communication number 9 and what is required going through the promotion and tenure process. If your unit or college has its own guidance, be sure you're familiar with that. Know what deadlines are, know what the length requirements are for statements, know what content is suggested for these things, and pay attention. As with a grant proposal, promotion and tenure, that process is not the place where you want to be experimental. Please, follow the rules along the way. I would encourage you to keep good records for yourself from the moment that you start here. Know what your research, teaching, and service distribution percentages are. Keep track of your ISIS evaluations. Keep your annual reviews, your third year reviews, know what they say. And if any information, especially from your unit's executive officer, is provided to you verbally, then I would encourage you to find a way of documenting that through a confirmation email or some other mechanism so that you can have that advice in a more persistent form. It's really important for you to be your own best advocate. And that means seeking assistance along the way when needed. So maybe you get an annual review one year that is not what you were hoping for. We can provide assistance, your mentors can provide assistance to help you make sense of the guidance that you're receiving from your executive officer and how you can address the deficiencies that may be noted. Along with actually working with mentors, you should identify them. It's a great idea, whether you have a formally appointed mentor within your unit or not, to find people who can be good sounding boards for you, whose advice and counsel that you trust. Create support networks, maybe with other untenured faculty or folks who are seeking promotion to full professor. Talk with one another, find out what works for them. And as you are putting together your dossier, and this goes back to part of what Curtis was talking about, the stories that need to be present in the dossier. Make a case in your statements, in your presentation for why your continued employment is in the best interest of the university. And if you do these things, you're going to be in the best possible position to succeed in promotion and tenure. As I mentioned, there are going to be times, and as Bill pointed out, there are going to be times when you feel like you've done these things and the decision is still a negative one. The FAC is there to provide support and potentially open an investigation. In an investigation around promotion and tenure, we would seek to understand whether the policies and procedures at both the departmental or unit level and at the campus level were followed. That, you know, there may be some small variations, and if you read the fine print in Provost Communication 9 and 10, that some small variations are not cause for alarm. But if there are significant departures from your unit or from the campus policies and procedures, that's a red flag. If someone was supposed to do a teaching evaluation and no one ever showed up, that's a red flag. If you had, stellar annual reviews and then all of a sudden you were denied for promotion or tenure, that is a potential red flag. So these are the kinds of issues that we might be able to investigate and come to some insight about what transpired and if there's something that we can recommend to correct it. We are not in a position to sort of reevaluate or relitigate the merits of your promotion and tenure case. We are less skilled than the campus P&T committee at sort of making sense of dossiers, but we can help look again for those procedural issues. So there will be some instances where we might refer you to other support units on campus. But if we can help, we typically ask you to share documentation. You can get a copy of your dossier and the internal evaluations by sending a note to campus HR. You will not be able to see your external letters of reference. FAC cannot see those either, but we can see your other materials and we can talk to folks who served on the P&T committee, your mentoring committee, your EO, and others to understand. And then beyond that, I would say once you're tenured, or if you're already tenured, I hope you'll consider standing for election to FAC. We're a great group of people. We care about each other. We care about the climate here at the university and about healthy faculty governance. And if you know someone, there are nominations were just open today, and they're open through May 3rd. And that's where I will leave things today. So please be in touch if we can help.
Well, thank you to all four of you. I think everyone deserves a round of applause. That was very, very helpful. One person who I forgot to introduce, and I'm very sorry, but that's Carol Symes, my vice president. And I know she's in, hello, Carol. I know she's in the chat, and she's one of the people who, if any of you has an anonymous question, could also be sort of monitoring. And Carol, feel free to just jump in and if there's ones and let me know. I do have one question that was raised to me that I'll just sort of read out anonymously, and it came to me in a direct message. Um, uh, and while I'm doing that, everyone else, please feel free either in the chat or start raising your hands, because this is a resource for all of you, and we want you to get what you need. The question is fairly simple. One, it is, what are the most effective ways to get report student feedback? ICES is a clear one. Anything else? And I think that question sort of arose, Curtis, while you were talking, but I know a number of people can talk about it. I could also, when people are done, tell you from the EO side what I try to do, if that helps.
So Rob, the question is how else can they get student feedback? Is that?
Yeah. So this is from I'm guessing someone who might be going up, but I'm not sure.
Sure.
Yeah. So let me just the way I interpret this question is, it just, this person wants to know what all, if they're trying to get all the information about student feedback, what should they be doing? And so of course we know there's the ICES, there's the what do you call it, the with all of the ICES together, what's that thing called?
Longitudinal report.
Longitudinal ICES scores. That always goes in, but then it's best if there are also some observations. And then I suppose if I were in a position and maybe I had like a gap or a hole, I might even want to talk to my EO to explain it, to say things that I've been doing in response to it, to show that I'm responsive, or explain it happened during COVID, things like give the right kind of information. But this person seems to be asking a broader question. Are there any other things? Yes, Curtis.
I mean, one thing that I don't think we want is cherry-picked student. I mean, like anyone, you know, if one student said this person is awesome, that doesn't mean that much, you know, out of 20 students or something, right? But if you felt that somehow the ICES scores and other information wasn't adequate to reflect your teaching, you could speak. Here's a thing you could do. So I don't love ICES myself. I'm happy that they'll be replaced with something else. And so what I've been doing for the last several years is, you know, been giving out a survey to all students in the class, telling them it's optional, and basically saying, if I teach this again, what are your recommendations for how I should change it? I get, you know, and if, since I did ask for that for everybody, if I could hand those over to a teaching, I could hand those over as a group, and then it wouldn't be cherry picked as part of, to someone who was doing a teaching evaluation, right? I would have to have told the students that that's what I was going to do with it, you know, but I'm just saying that I think there's room. Part of what I was trying to emphasize is I think there is, if you feel that there's an aspect of your record that isn't being met by the highly formatted things we already have, you probably can think creatively about how objectively and fairly to get that information in a way that could then be used by somebody. So that would be an idea, would, you know, like have a, say, here's an optional survey that I will use. I will turn them all in. If you want to fill it out, you can. I'm not promising anonymity, but you know, that's sort of what I do. Like I do know some of your handwriting, so you know, it's up to you whether you trust me. But then you could hand all those over, and then it wouldn't be necessarily a cherry picked thing, like just picking the one positive comment on out of a set of evaluations. I mean, in other words, but there probably are other suggestions too. Just think creatively about how fairly and without violating anybody's confidentiality or rights or FERPA or things, you can get the information that would actually tell the true story.
And I would suggest that if you do that, that might, if you know, translating that into your dossier, you would probably share that with people who are doing the internal evaluations
right.
of your teaching, and that they could review that as part of their observation and consider it as part of a context building around what they see around your teaching. I wouldn't submit that, just so you know, as a standalone document to go with your dossier. But also for you also to think about, as you know, when you write your teaching reflections, to reflect on those kinds of information that you receive from students. So there's definitely lots of ways that you can get formative as well as summative information from your students that you could reflect on in your teaching statement. But yeah, just wanted to make sure that it's important for you to really gather as much information for your unit, to gather as much information about your teaching and not just rely on one piece of evidence as the evidence for your teaching success.
In my own view, I've sometimes seen things that could initially look like a gap or a slight problem that actually are turned into positives if they're framed and understood the right way. So you might want to talk to your EO. Just like an example might be, if I see a slight gap, I might I'm not talking about a gap that would kill a case, but just just something that might raise a question. Maybe there's a semester where things are low or a course where things are off. I might talk to the professor and if I know that this was the first time that they were, transferring the course into a new modality. It was something like that. And then since then, what they learned was X and then Y, and they brought that into the teaching in this way. That's something I might say in my EO letter. It's something you might say in your teaching statement, and it shows that you're being reflective, evolving. And sometimes that's actually, I don't think we're an institution where we don't want anyone to ever take risks. But that's not exactly information from a student, but it's part of the picture that you probably want someone to know if there's a story.
Just one little thing. Curtis alluded to the fact that ISIS is changing. We will have we are working to implement a new system of student evaluations over the next year or so. That will provide more opportunity for feedback beyond the bubble form. Did you like the class? Yes or no? But to give students an opportunity to provide more feedback about specific objectives around classroom teaching. I think it'll be more informative. We hope it'll be less biased, but it will also still be part of this teaching evaluation that moves forward with the dossier. So more information to come on that next fall.
Wonderful. All right. Any questions? Don't be shy. This really, we're all here to help you. So I'm sure some of you have thoughts and questions, and you really should feel free to jump in. Any hands?
All right, our own Rob Parker has his hand up.
Oh,
Rob.
did I not see it? Bob.
Sorry, Bob. Yeah, right. You had your hand up.
Yes, hello, thank you. I'm going to say a few things I'm here in my role as the immediate past president of the AAUP chapter and one of the organizers of this panel. And I want to make a couple sets of comments divided into two areas. The first is about the AAUP itself, the American Association of University Professors that has a chapter on campus that is sponsoring this panel, and encourage people to join the American Association of University Professors. This is a time when, as you know, however you frame it, universities are under an extraordinary intensity of threat that we've already heard how at this panel, how it is undermining some people's research, it's undermining some people's teaching. This is a time when it can really help to join the American Association of University Professors to support everything that we're talking about at this event. If you want more information about that, I put some links in the chat, and I'm sure that our chapter president, Rob Carr, or Vice President Carol Symes would be very happy to talk with you or get an email from you, as would I, and tell you more about that and invite you to events. And speaking of inviting you to events, as Rob mentioned a little while ago, and he just asked me to remind people about this. The local chapter is sponsoring an event on April 25th. So that's a week from today, on threats to higher education on the road to authoritarianism. And that will be from 12 to 1:30, and it will be on Zoom. And I will put that address in the chat, and you can sign up for that at that address if you are interested. It will have two speakers, Peter Fritschy, who is a historian of Nazi Germany and will speak about what happened there, and Maxim Krupski, who is a human rights attorney from Russia, who will speak about the precedents for what has happened in Russia and how, in both cases, what happened to universities and how that might apply to things that could happen here. Having said that, let me shift a little bit and just comment a little bit on things that have been said. First, I want to endorse, based on extensive experience with the AAUP and as a faculty member, the relatively sweet song that our panelists have sung about how the process works at this campus, where it is a process designed to help people follow through on the promise that brought them to the University of Illinois in the first place. It works really well, almost always. It doesn't always work, as we've heard, as well as we might hope. It usually does. And to help us maximize the strengths of that program, I just want to add one little comment about a point where I've seen things can get a little more complicated than they need to be. We heard today that the process of assembling the papers for promotion to associate professor begins in the fall of the in the spring of the fifth year. And that's true. That's when it begins officially. But that process should begin long before, as Ami Santos traced out the year-by-year process of evaluation. So the assembling of the papers and the materials and the drafts of your statements and the assemblage with your advisors and your department head of who might be possible reviewers, all that should begin before that spring semester of the fifth year. And I'm sorry, but I've seen that not every administrator always has the experience to understand that it should begin before that process. So if you're not an administrator and you're up for promotion, you want to talk to your administrators to make sure that process gets going at an earlier date, and talk to your mentors. And if you are an administrator, I hope you're listening. That process, as most of you probably know, needs to begin at an earlier time. And with that, I just want to thank the panel that's done such a great job here of giving us an overview of this process and supporting our faculty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob. And with that, there are starting to be some questions here. And one is very short, so I know it came later, but I'll just, so speaking of AAUP membership, one person asked, are there any citizenship requirements for AAUP membership? I don't believe there are, but is that correct? There are not. And just a quick anecdote, when I first started in the profession, we all do this. You're working on your research, your teaching, your service, and you don't always, or I didn't always understand the larger institutional context that makes it all hum. And so this is a time where I think many of us are more interested in that, and we'd love to have you join and have your support. But let me move on to the questions, because this is really about you guys getting some questions. These are anonymous. So one, perhaps this was already discussed, but how does a tenured faculty member know when they're ready to apply for promotion to full? My EO says I'm making good progress and does not have any suggestions for gaps that need to be addressed. External mentors agree with that assessment, but I want to be certain I know when to apply. Thank you.
This is a great question. There is no timeline for going up to full professor. So by university statutes, to go to be considered for associate professor with tenure, it has to happen in Tenure Code 6. That's it. That's the end of, you can't extend that. But for the promotion to full professor, there is no specific timeline. And in fact, disciplinary norms vary considerably. There are some STEM disciplines where it's relatively short time in rank, 2-3 years even. For humanities and social sciences, you're probably looking at a general expectation that it'd be another 6 6 years or so before then. The most important thing to do is exactly what you're doing. Talk to your EO, talk to your full professors around you. Have the conversation. Where am I? What do I need to do? What are the expectations? And listen and be responsive. I think very often people will just continue to do work without having that conversation, without having that understanding, and find themselves, waiting too long. But having that conversation and with the EO to understand the expectations is tremendously important. It's also not, it's also possible for you to ask to go up. It's entirely possible for you to say, I want to be considered. And your EO may say, yes, great, we're ready to do that. Your EO may say, you sure? And you can still say yes. That is your right as a faculty member. I'd encourage you to think about that. One of the concerns that we have about the promotion to full is if you don't ask, you don't get it. So it's okay to ask about it. It's okay to push on it a little bit. We would like to make that decision a little bit more regular with our EOs, and we talk about the importance of mentoring and evaluating people, evaluating associate professors every year around this conversation. But it's still a flexible timeline.
And if I could add something here, I want to be careful in using the word best practices, but I do think that this is probably best practices if possible, and units differ. But there are some units that will have an ad hoc committee or the executive committee or something like that sort of review, and it can even be part of your annual review and give you feedback as to whether they think it's a good time to sort of go up. They're not allowed to make promises as to whether the promotion would go through, or even statements of likelihood. But there are different levels of formality in different units, and I've been told in some contexts that it's best practices to have a step like that to help give people feedback, and I've been trying to do it in philosophy recently. That has been, as Bill mentioned, that works best when you also have more robust and increasingly formalized mentoring that continues through mid-career, so that maybe you're getting some feedback all along. But I'll also just tell you that I'm sure not every department does things that formally, and I could see anything from you having to ask to maybe something even more formal than what I've suggested in some cases. Okay, next question. And Carol, should I just go on and okay. Some faculty, I'm not trying to take questions from it. Some faculty were saying that the rules are going to be, quote, more relaxed because of the difficult time in terms of grants research. I am not expecting a relaxed set of policies, but I don't want misinformation to spread. So is this true? Are the rules going to be more relaxed? That's good. So how committed is the institution? And I know things are changing, but
yeah. Well, I don't. Are the depends what you mean by rules. Will our processes change? No. Will our expectations of excellence change? No, absolutely not. We still will be promoting and tenuring people on their demonstrated potential to be leaders in their field, with national and international reputations. Promotion to full, fulfilling that potential. Where I think we need to have some conversations is thinking about some of the markers that departments use to evaluate the success of candidates, and to recognize and work with units to recognize that some of the changes in the environment change the nature of some of the ways in which they evaluate candidates. So for instance, in English, in Curtis's field, it's a book field. You get that first book done. That's, it's not a guarantee, but that's the big bar. For some of our STEM fields, they really look at federal funding as a key indicator. So in some of our fields in biology, getting that R01 grant is seen as necessary and sufficient for getting that. That's the rule of thumb. Or getting an NSF Career Award. That's the rule of thumb. As this landscape for federal funding changes, we need to think about different ways to evaluate the excellence of our candidates, because those grants, that money is not going to be available the way it used to be. It's going to be, I'm inferring that it's going to be much more difficult to come by. So that doesn't mean that we are lowering our standards. We still expect excellence. We just need to find some different ways to evaluate that excellence. And that's conversations that have to go on among the senior faculty, but it also underscores the importance of having your annual review and sitting down at the annual review and having an in-depth conversation with your EO and whatever review committee is there, and talking about this change, the changing landscape for higher education research. What does it mean? How are you interpreting? Here's how I see it. Here's what it means for my work. And building that common set of expectations takes on, I think, an even more important role during this time because we can't rely on some of the old ways of doing things.
That's helpful. I see a finger, and then I also see Carol.
I just wanted to say both about the last question and about this one. One of the things that if you're trying to evaluate when to go up for full, I mean, one of the questions is, when will my department support me? But another question is, when will a set of external evaluators support me? And that can be a trickier and harder question to answer. And I do think that as markers change and as disciplinary norms change, the question of external evaluators becomes the vexed part. And that's one of it's really important for departments to be clear-headed about what they're doing, because you may get a letter that says this person's excellent, but they don't have that marker, even though that marker is not available. We will need to be able to mount those cases really clearly as well internally.
You should know, please correct me, other people who know more about this, but if you go up and don't get it early, you can't use the same external references. So isn't that also true under our so that's just another thing to think about. If you're getting advice to wait, just think about that.
That's the cost, yeah.
You had your hand up.
Yeah, so a question has come in anonymously to me very much on this topic. And the question is, since there is no clock for promotion and there's no, there's no formal rollback process, and I think maybe there's not an answer to this right now, but what is the best way to proactively address delays in research that are being caused by the current funding climate or external factors like family illnesses, things like that. So I think that's a question. Something that I'll say from the experiences of my own department, which 5 years ago decided to change its set of policies for promotion to full. That as a book discipline, history had always just really had always relied on a replication of the tenure process. That you have to get to full, you have to write another book. But we were recognizing that we had amazing associate professors who were doing other things, ginormous numbers of articles, or they were collaborating on a big project, or they were editing journals, or they were doing other things, and that one size fits all model for promotion was really unfair and not really workable. So we actually changed our own internal policies. And a lot of this was due to, pressure that was coming from folks who were feeling like they were being held back. So I guess something I'll just say to everybody here is that if you are in that position as an associate wanting to go to full and you feel like your department has outdated or almost irrelevant expectations for what excellence looks like for a full professor, that can be a conversation that the department should be, can have and should be encouraged to have, I think. But again, this question but I'd love to hear other thoughts from Curtis or Bill about this.
Yeah, I'd say two things, Carol, to that. One is, the importance of the annual review process post-tenure. I think sometimes there's an attitude among faculty candidates, there's an attitude among senior faculty, hey, you you got tenure, you know what's going on, you can handle it.
Yeah.
No. Your job changes fundamentally when you become an associate professor. You have the same office, you have the same parking space, probably teaching the same classes. There are different expectations around service. There are different expectations about leadership, innovation, research productivity. It is so important to continue the conversation. And even if your unit doesn't have a formal role, I recommend so strongly that you go to your EO and say, it's April, it's time, we need to talk about what I did and where I'm going. And then the next year, it's April, we need to talk about this. You can push that issue. I know some colleges do have more formal processes for associate professor reviews and so on and so forth. I would like to see us, if I had my druthers, and I don't, if I had my druthers, I would like to see us do, a sort of a campus-wide third-year review for associate professors. We don't have that, but you can create that atmosphere by asking for the feedback. The other thing, Carol, I want to comment on is changing standards within the discipline, and history is such a great example that took this on. Campus, the provost office, let's go back to, it's a level, what those standards are for your discipline, it's not up to me. What that dossier story is the department, the unit saying, this is what we consider excellent in our discipline, and this is how the candidate has met those standards. So it really is up to the unit to think about changing standards, to changing types of evaluation, to recognizing new contributions. We can create some space for it here at the provost level, but those expectations are undertaking at the department level. So it is really important to help nurture those conversations and to help some of your more senior colleagues understand that your disciplines are changing. And there are different modes and different ways of making contributions. Change is not going to happen overnight, but you can't have change if you don't keep trying. So
Thanks so much, Bill. That's so nice. So helpful.
We have one more question. Let me just say on a broader point, there is never a time in life where we can't grow further with sincere feedback. So try to avoid that thing where I'm senior enough now that I don't need to listen to anyone for anything that could help me. Not always a good idea. Okay, so the question here is, I'm sorry if I missed this before, but is there an update on the new ICES forms? Will the longitudinal profile still be required? I think that's a quick one, and we're almost out of time, so maybe.
Yeah, the new forms, I believe, are coming online this fall. They will still have as kind of a transition, we will still ask the two global questions of, did you like the course and did you like the professor? So there will be some continuity there. There will be an expectation that those evaluations, summaries of those student evaluations will still be included as part of the promotion packet. I don't quite know the format yet because I haven't seen that, but Ami Santos is working with Provost Fellow Jeffrey Herman on it with a task force to come up with the new questions and all the details about the new formatting.
Okay, we are at 4:02, which is the end of our time. And so first, let me just thank everyone who came as a panelist. As always, you guys have so much experience and knowledge, and I hope people got a lot out of this.